What is going on today, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Fix It Garage. Today's episode, we're gonna do some general maintenance on the Subaru. We're gonna change the oil. We're gonna cut the filter open, check it, make sure there's no weird metal in it. We're gonna drain the cooling system and add some cooling system mods. One of which is right here. So right here we have a Torque Solutions cylinder 4 cooling upgrade. This will go in the back of the cylinder 4 cylinder head. We're gonna add some redline water wetter to it now, just to try to bring those temps down just a little bit. It does run a little hotter than I like when it's hot out. I could go with straight water, but because I do drive this thing year round, I'm really hesitant to run straight water. We're also gonna change out the thermostat housing that's down there. I'll get more light on it when we actually get into it. But we're gonna change that out with the killer B Motorsports thermostat housing. Once that gets here, it should be here any minute now. So let's get right to work. Alright guys, so as you can see we got all the oil out, and here's the old oil filter, and as you can see we made a small mess which we've since cleaned up. So as you can see, all cleaned up. We got the drain bolt back in. Right now we have the filter off. We're going to go ahead and install the new oil filter, which as you can see is pre-filled with oil. So let's go ahead and get that installed, and then we're going to cut open the old one and see what's inside. Alright, here we go. New filter with a lubricated gasket. Alright, filter's installed. Let's cut open the old one. Alright guys, so I'm going to do the best I can to film this. So we're going to cut open this oil filter. So we have our old filter right here. Got our filter cutter. Alright, filter's cut open. We can set that down. Now we're gonna pull the filter cartridge out and have a look at it. So, sorry about all the background noise. I do have neighbors where I live. Alright, so let's just pour out all that oil and look in the bottom. There's no metal in there, which is good. So now we're going to start to look at the filter cartridge itself. Okay, so I'm going to look at it. I'm going to try to show you guys if I find anything in here. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking inside the filter elements for any metal debris, large chunks of metal anywhere. So far so clean. Oh, okay, so alright. I don't know if the camera's able to pick this up, but there's some tiny little pieces in there. So there's like a little tiny piece in there, which is that's pretty normal. So I'm not seeing anything inside this filter that looks abnormal. I'm not seeing giant chunks everywhere that would make me concerned about, you know, bearings failing and the engine falling apart.
So I think at this point, the engine itself is good, which is a good sign for my engine that's... So this thing got, after being broken in by English, I've been driving it for about 3,000 miles, so for 3,000 miles I'd say this looks pretty good. I don't see any signs of extreme wear or engine falling apart or anything I don't really want to see inside here. A couple more little tiny pieces in that one. So every engine's always going to have a little, you're always going to find a little bit of metal in the filter. We're going to call this good. We're going to clean up this, and we're going to start draining the coolant out next. All right, guys, so we got everything cleaned up. We've actually got the coolant already draining from the radiator. So while that's draining, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be doing. So we have this guy right here, the Torque Solutions Cylinder 4 coolant upgrade. So this goes in the back of the cylinder head at cylinder 4, and this will go into the heater core line. This will help promote better coolant flow around cylinder 4, which will also help bring down the temperatures of cylinder 4. Also, from another recent video that I was just watching, I found this, the Killer B thermostat housing. So I will show you the other one when I take it off, but this actually has a more gradual bend than the factory thermostat housing. So we're going to be replacing the factory one with this to again help coolant flow and coolant temperatures. I also have a new thermostat sitting over on my bench, and then when we fill it all back up, we're going to add some Redline water wetter. I've talked to a lot of people and they all like running water wetter. It helps keep the coolant temperatures a little bit more consistent for them, which is all I'm looking for, especially when we're at the track running for long periods of time. I want the coolant temperatures to stay consistent. I don't need them fluctuating too much. I also think probably right now I had a big air bubble in it, so we're gonna make sure when we fill it all back up, we bleed the system really well. So yeah, I will check back in with you guys once the cooling system's drained and we start taking things apart. Cooling system's drained. So next thing we need to do is we need to remove the lower radiator hose to get access to the thermostat housing. Obviously there's still gonna be coolant inside the engine block, so we're still gonna be making a small mess. So let's go ahead and get that hose off, and then we'll get the thermostat housing off, and I'll show you guys the difference between the old one and the new one. Alright guys, so we got the coolant all drained, as you could see. So there's some more coolant, there's the thermostat. Here's our two thermostat housing. So here is the old Subaru factory thermostat housing. As you can see, coolant comes out of the thermostat and goes back to the radiator, and it's a very aggressive bend. Killer B says that this is a very inefficient system, and it doesn't allow free flowing coolant. So they've developed this part right here. As you can see, the bend has a much more gradual bend and a much smoother bend, allowing coolant to flow more freely. So we're gonna put this on the car now with a brand new thermostat. And I'm gonna link Killer B Motorsports in the description below, so be sure to check them out. They've got not only this, but I also have their, as you guys have seen, their bigger oil pan and their bigger oil pickup. I had their oil pan baffle, but I changed it out for the new IAG one. So link to IAG in the description below as well. So let's go ahead and get this part installed. All right, so we've got our new thermostat, and it goes just like that. And we're gonna take our Killer B thermostat housing with the new hardware provided. so as you guys can see, we've got it all tightened up. So they don't tell you to do this, but it is recommended that you trim the hose, because if you look, if I were to slide this on just as is, I think it would kink the hose. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, if I slide this on like this, that's gonna put a kink in it. So I'm gonna trim it to start with, just before that Mishimoto logo. So there we go. So now I cut some of the hose off. See how it fits. That looks like it might fit pretty good. So let's go ahead and slide this guy on there. See how we look. See that? Look at that. A nice bend and a nice bend. That looks really good. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten this hose clamp up. Ouch. This part of the install's done, so now we're gonna move on to doing the rear coolant hose mod. All right, guys, so I'm gonna attempt to show you what we got going on here for this cylinder 4 cooling mod. I've watched a few people that have done it. It looks pretty straightforward. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be pulling out that hex nut right there. We're gonna be bolting in the new Torque Solutions coolant mod. So let's go ahead and get that out, and then I'll show you guys how we're going to put the new one in. So, as you can see, here's the part that we needed to get out. Now we're gonna prep the new one to go in. All right, guys. So, it's hard to see, but you can see where I pulled that plug out. So now, we're gonna put some liquid gasket on here. And then we're gonna put it in. And use some good old Honda Bond. All right. So we've put some on our threads. So we're gonna go ahead and put this in, and we're gonna tighten it up with a 25mm wrench. And I'll show you guys what it looks like after it gets tightened. All right, guys, so welcome back. We're gonna show you what we got going on in here. So as you can see, we've got the Torque Solutions cooling system upgrade installed. Sorry I didn't film a lot of it. It's very hard to get a camera up here, but as you can see, it's all installed. All the clamps are down tight. That's currently curing. So I know there's two different ones of these. There's the Torque Solution, and there's the other one, which I forgot the name of, that's more of the original. I personally recommend getting the one that is not the Torque Solutions. This one, I noticed the hose wasn't quite long enough, so I had to trim this hose here shorter down at this end so it didn't hit my steering rack. And as you can see, I've got just enough room so the steering rack and that aren't going to hit during any kind of driving. At no point should this hit, even when hoses and metal heat and expand and contract. So now that we got all that done, we need to let it cure for, I like to let them usually sit for about 3 hours. So in the meantime, I think I'm going to cut some holes in my skid plate to try to give some more heat relief for when it's moving, so air has more places to escape. So let's go ahead and break out the hole saw and the skid plate, and let's get to cutting some holes. All right, guys, so the Honda Bond is currently curing, so let's go ahead and cut up this Rallytech skid plate. Got everything I need already over here, so let's get right to cutting it up. Alright guys, so we got the skid plate all cut up. As you can see, we drilled some holes in it. They're not the prettiest holes, but you'll never see them, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just using these as another way to help maybe get a little bit of heat out. Who knows if it's really gonna work. It's either gonna pull heat out, or maybe when I'm driving, it'll suck some fresh air underneath to help cool everything down. Everything I'm doing is just an attempt to try and cool the car down. I'm not sure what's really gonna work and what's not, but I'm willing to try a little bit of everything. So now, once this Honda Bond's all dry, we're gonna start bleeding the cooling. We're gonna put oil in it. We're gonna bleed the cooling system. And for oil, I'm gonna be using some Motul 8100 XS 540. So we're gonna go ahead and fill it up once everything's dry. We're gonna fill that up and we're gonna fill up the cooling system, and then we'll sit here and we'll bleed the cooling system and get all the bubbles out and see if we notice a difference. So check back in with you when everything's dry. All right, guys, so it's had enough time for that Honda Bond to dry. So let's go ahead and fill this thing up with coolant and some oil. We'll bleed the cooling system.
guys, that's going to effectively end today's episode. I want to thank all of you for watching. Next week, we're going to take this car and we're going to lower it down to track height on those Öhlins coilovers that it has. So stick around and stay tuned. If you like what you saw, remember to hit the like button, leave comments in the comment section below, and please consider subscribing. I want to thank all of you guys for the continued support. Remember that on cars like this, there's no such thing as a finished project.